The deposit lands at 4 in the morning on the 1st, while he is asleep. $2,210. He did nothing to cause it. He did not attend anything, solve anything, or answer to anybody. He wakes up and the money is simply there. Every piece of content about financial independence stops at the arithmetic. The number you need, the rate you withdraw, the years it takes. Almost none of it describes the actual month. Not the math of it, the mornings, the guilt, the strange silence where a job used to be. The deposit has an unremarkable origin. 19 years of contributions into ordinary holdings that pay out on a schedule. Interest, dividends, distributions. No cleverness, no timing, and nothing anybody would want to watch a video about. Boring inputs over a long time, producing a monthly figure. The second day brings something he did not anticipate and cannot immediately name. Sitting with coffee at 9:15 on a Tuesday, he feels caught. Not relaxed. Caught. As though someone is about to walk in and ask him what exactly he thinks he is doing. The feeling has a source. For 19 years, every dollar he received arrived with a receipt attached. Hours worked, tasks completed, somebody's approval at the other end. The money was always evidence of something. This deposit is the first money in his adult life that is not evidence of anything. On the 4th, he buys groceries with it, and something small and strange happens at the card reader. A half-second hesitation that has nothing to do with the balance. He is spending money that no hour of his life corresponds to, and part of him is waiting to be stopped. Nothing happens. The transaction clears the way transactions clear. He carries the bags to the car and sits in the driver's seat for a moment, feeling faintly ridiculous. The entire event was ordinary. He had braced hard for something that was never going to arrive at all. On the 5th, he forgets to not set the alarm. It goes off at 6:10, and he lies there listening to it, genuinely unsure for 4 seconds whether he is late for something. Then he remembers, switches it off, and does not go back to sleep for another hour. The first Monday is the hardest day of the month and nobody warns anyone about it. Sunday evening arrives carrying 19 years of low-level dread, entirely out of habit. The dread has nothing left to attach itself to, so it circles for a while and then dissipates strangely. This is a pattern that runs through the whole month. The decision was made in a spreadsheet, but the body was never consulted. 19 years of conditioning does not end because a balance crossed a threshold, and the gap between the two is where most of the discomfort lives. Day 9. A neighbor's barbecue, and the question arrives 11 minutes in. So what do you do? He has rehearsed 4 answers and uses none of them. He says he used to be in logistics, which is true, past tense, and technically an evasion. Retired sounds wrong at 48. Unemployed is inaccurate and invites sympathy. Investor sounds like a boast, and also like a job he does not actually perform. There is no ordinary English word for a person whose money covers their life, and the absence of the word is itself a problem. On the 12th, the market falls, meaningfully, over 3 days. When he had a salary, this was abstract and mildly interesting. Now, it is the machinery that pays for his groceries, and the difference in how it lands in his chest is enormous and immediate. Here is what the salary was actually doing all those years, beyond paying for things. It was absorbing volatility emotionally. As long as income arrived regardless of what any chart did, the chart was entertainment. Remove the salary, and the chart stops being entertainment. Permanently. So he does the arithmetic properly on the 14th at the kitchen table, longhand. The payouts he lives on did not fall. The quoted value of the holdings fell. Those are 2 different numbers, and he has been treating them as one, which is the actual source of the fear. This distinction does most of the emotional work for the rest of the month. What something is quoted at on a given Tuesday and what it pays out are not the same event. They move for different reasons and on different schedules. Confusing them makes ordinary weeks feel like emergencies. It would be dishonest to leave it there, though. Payouts are not fixed and they can be reduced, particularly in a bad enough year. The distinction reduces panic. It does not remove risk, and anybody selling it as a removal of risk is selling something. He notices he has opened the same spreadsheet 11 times in 15 days. Nothing in it has changed meaningfully. Checking is not analysis, it is reassurance seeking. And reassurance seeking on a daily cycle makes a long horizon position feel like a short horizon one. On the 16th, he does the one practical thing he had been putting off. He sets aside enough plain cash to cover roughly 2 years of ordinary spending, held separately and deliberately boring. It earns very little. Its purpose is not to earn. Its purpose is to let him sleep. The reasoning is not sophisticated. If a bad stretch arrives, he does not want to be forced to sell anything at a poor moment simply because a bill is due in 11 days. The buffer buys patience, and patience is the single most valuable thing a person in his position can hold. Day 19. Coffee with someone from the old job. The conversation is warm for 20 minutes and then tilts. There is a joke about some people not having to work, delivered lightly, and a pause afterwards that is 1 second too long for either of them to ignore. The joke is not cruelty. It is arithmetic performed emotionally in real time. The colleague is comparing 2 lives and finding an asymmetry, and there is no polite social script for that comparison. Both men handle it well. Neither of them mentions it again, and the coffees become less frequent. On the 21st, he says no to something for the first time. A former manager offers 3 months of consulting at a rate that would once have felt like validation. He declines in 11 words and then sits with an odd feeling for the rest of the afternoon. The odd feeling is worth naming. For 19 years, being wanted for work was how he measured his standing. Declining removes the measurement. He now has the freedom to say no, and no longer has the instrument that told him he was doing well, and the two arrived on the same day. His daughter, who is 23 and paying rent for the first time, asks him directly whether he is all right for money. He says yes. She does not entirely believe him because he has not changed anything visible, and visible change is the only evidence most people accept. Something changes at the supermarket on the 23rd, and he notices it immediately. He does not look at the price of cheese, not out of extravagance, out of the specific knowledge that this particular category of decision no longer moves anything in his life by a measurable amount. This turns out to be what it actually feels like, and it is far smaller than the brochures suggest. Not yachts, not a different life, the removal of about 40 small calculations per week that used to run quietly in the background of every ordinary errand. The 25th is a Wednesday with nothing in it, and he handles it badly. He reorganizes a cupboard that did not need reorganizing, watches 2 hours of something he does not enjoy, and goes to bed at 9:40 feeling worse than he did on any working Wednesday. Nobody puts this line in the financial independence calculation. A job supplies money, and it also supplies structure, colleagues, a reason to leave the house, and a ready answer to a common question. The money is replaceable with capital. The other 4 have to be rebuilt by hand. So on the 27th, he does something deliberately unglamorous. He commits to 3 fixed things a week. A Tuesday morning at a community workshop, a Thursday swim, and Friday afternoons helping a small charity with logistics, which is the only thing he has ever been genuinely good at. 3. Deliberately. The instinct is to fill the calendar completely. And people who do that generally recreate the job they just left, minus the pay. 3 fixed points give a week a shape without giving it a boss, and the difference between those 2 things is the entire point. On the 29th, the guilt comes back, wearing a different outfit. Not the earlier feeling of being caught, something closer to the sense that he has stepped out of a queue everybody else is still standing in, and that stepping out was somehow unfair to the people still in it. He sits with that honestly, and reaches an answer that is not entirely comfortable. The queue was never fair. Some people entered it with a paid-off education, and some entered it owing $40,000. Feeling guilty about leaving does not make the queue fairer for anybody still in it. What he lands on is less about guilt and more about behavior. He does not owe anybody an apology for 19 years of contributions. He does owe the people still working the courtesy of not making his position their reminder, which mostly means not talking about it uninvited. The following month, at 4 in the morning on the 1st, it happens again. $2,210, give or take. This is the moment it becomes real, because the first deposit felt like an event, and the second one reveals it as a pattern. The second deposit produces almost none of the emotion the first one did. No guilt, no vertigo, no waiting to be caught. It is closer to how a paycheck felt in year 6 of a job. The extraordinary becomes ordinary faster than anybody expects, and that is mostly a mercy. In month 8, the boiler fails, and a car needs a transmission in the same fortnight. The buffer covers both, without a single holding being sold. And this is the first moment it stops being theoretical. He replaces what he used over the following 4 months, slowly and without drama. Asked later what he would tell somebody approaching this, he does not mention rates or allocations. He says, build the 2-year buffer before you need it. Put 3 fixed things in your week before your last day, and accept that the first month will feel worse than the last month of work. That is the reversal worth sitting with. 19 years of effort went into the financial question, and the financial question turned out to be the one that arrived solved. What arrived unsolved was every non-financial thing the job had been quietly providing for 2 decades. From outside, none of this month was visible. He drove the same car, lived in the same house, wore the same jacket, and shopped at the same supermarket. One neighbor thinks he is between roles. Another assumes he works from home. Neither is curious enough to ask again. This is the part of quiet wealth that gets romanticized and should not be. The silence is not a strategy he chose for elegance. It is that there is no way to describe this position to most people without the conversation becoming about them, and he would rather keep the friendships. The second month is uneventful, which is the actual destination. 3 fixed commitments, a buffer he does not touch, deposits on the 1st, and a Wednesday that no longer frightens him. Nothing about it would make a compelling story, and that is precisely what 19 years bought. By month 6, the first of the month has stopped being an occasion. It is a date on which a thing happens, like a bin collection. He no longer checks at 4 in the morning. He checks around lunchtime if he remembers, and sometimes he does not remember. Looking back, the deposits changed his week far less than the buffer and the 3 commitments did. The money removed a category of worry. The structure gave the days a shape. Only one of those 2 things required 19 years, and it was not the one he spent 19 years thinking about. People who find out always ask the same thing, and it is always the number. How much did it take? He understands the question, and it is the wrong one, because the number depends entirely on a life he has not described and spending they have not disclosed. The question that would actually help is smaller and much less satisfying. What does an ordinary month of your life cost? Honestly, including the things you pretend are occasional. Almost nobody knows their own answer, and every calculation about this depends entirely on that one figure. So the only number he tracks now is that one, not the value of anything, not any rate, just the honest monthly cost of his actual life, updated quarterly, which moves less than anybody expects. The rest of the arithmetic follows from it and requires almost no attention. The interesting discovery is how stable that figure is. Across 2 years, it has varied by less than 4%. Despite 1 broken boiler, a wedding, and a fairly expensive dental year. A life has a fairly consistent price, and most people have never once measured theirs. 1 year on, the first arrives, and he is on a train, going to help the charity move an office. He notices the notification, dismisses it without opening it, and goes back to reading. The deposit that once woke him at 4 in the morning is now something he swipes away. The first month taught him something the arithmetic could not. Money solves money problems, completely and permanently, and it solves nothing else. Every other problem in that month, and there were several, was a problem about identity, structure, or other people. None of them had a financial solution. So if you are building toward this, build both halves. The buffer and the 3 fixed things matter as much as the number, and only one of them is being discussed anywhere. Somewhere ahead of you is a 4 in the morning deposit and an empty Wednesday. Which one are you actually preparing for?